Great. Hi, everyone. It looks like we've got people joining. Sorry, we're running a little bit past noon, but we'll go ahead and make a start. Thanks, everyone, for joining our session today. And welcome to our International Women's Day webinar to celebrate women's achievements in housing and also to raise awareness against bias. So International Women's Day has been celebrated since the early 1900s, a very different time when women were challenging oppression and inequality through campaigns for change. And while we have come a long way to 2022, in a world where women do have real choice and where women are in positions of power and leadership internationally, the reality is today women are still not paid equally to men. Women are still not present in equal numbers in politics or in business. And globally, women's education, health, and violence is worse than that of men, and violence against them is worse than that of men. And so that's why we continue to celebrate International Women's Day. It's a global holiday to commemorate the cultural, political, and socioeconomic achievements of women and to raise awareness against bias, giving us a platform to discuss, but also to act. And this year, the theme for International Women's Day is to break the bias. And that challenges us to work hard towards creating a world that is free of bias, stereotypes, and free of discrimination, a world that is diverse and equitable and inclusive, and a world that celebrates and values our differences. And of course, as we gather here today, our thoughts and our hearts are with those impacted by the humanitarian crisis in Ukraine. So I'm Cassidy. I'm a consultant here at Altair and Altair International. And before I introduce you to our panelists, I want to tell you about this International Women in Business series that we've developed. And this series that brings our panelists here to our webinar today was really born from a desire for Altair to share the stories of those women who we have met through our work internationally. And we really see so many women driving forward the affordable housing sector internationally and making a real change to people's lives, making real impact in our world. And these women are really diverse in their background and in their vocations, with skills ranging from construction and architecture, urban design, right the way through to finance and business. And we feel that their stories are motivating and potentially helpful for those building their careers, but also those stories to help those that are already working in housing to think about how to continue to drive the sector forward to be more inclusive for all of those within it. So I'm going to introduce our panelists. We do have one panelist who is in back-to-backs today, so we'll give her a little bit of time to join a bit later. But I'll start with Fatu. Fatu Day is based in Kigali in Rwanda. She's an expert on affordable housing and sustainable cities and takes a strategic focus on the use of local materials and labor for sustainable urban design and management. And she's spent the last 8 years of her career developing sustainable, affordable housing solutions fit for communities in Africa's Great Lakes region, which includes Rwanda, Burundi, and the Dominican Republic of Congo. And Marie Zanders is currently part of the core team at Empower, which is a new platform enabling the building of affordable and greener houses in Africa through decentralized end user finance. And she leads on Empower's relationships with delivery partners on the ground in Africa. And in 2018, she co-founded Casa Real, which is a social enterprise proving that quality and resilient housing can be delivered at a cost that is affordable and appealing to many low and income people in Mozambique. And finally, if she is able to join us, we've got Sadia Aliou, who is the MD at Urban Shelter Nigeria, which is one of Nigeria's oldest and largest real estate companies. Sadia joined Urban Shelter from a finance and development role in Nigerian government in 2009, rising up the ranks from Chief Operating Officer and eventually becoming the MD and Chief Executive Officer in 2018. So welcome to our panelists. So we'll go ahead and kick off with some questions. And the first question is, what does International Women's Day mean to you? We were just discussing before the session how we all woke up this morning and thought about the day. So if I can go ahead and open that up to the panelists. Fatu, do you want to start it for us?
Certainly. So, as we were saying, I mean, International Women's Day, I think it's nice that it's one day, but it should recognize, you know, the work of women, obviously year round. And the most important part for me really is that I think it's an opportunity not really to have the look from outside, but for women to take the chance to look inward and look at the circle and the partnerships that they have with women, look internationally at the work and the inequalities that we have between the situation of women all around the world, and just kind of recognize that and realize that we have to, you know, all try and move ourselves up together. And it's a shared experience, and it's a shared battle too.
Thanks. And Marie?
Yes, thank you, Cassidy. By the way, my internet is giving problems. If the screen freezes, it's because of that. Apologies. I'll try to restart soon. But yeah, International Women's Day. When I was younger, growing up from where I'm originally from, the Netherlands, Northern European country, and being extremely privileged and also being educated to that, you know, the world is my oyster. I can do anything I want. And in a country like the Netherlands, I was lucky enough to be raised also in a family with that outlook, and that was confirmed at several moments in my journey. So I have to be honest that up until I went working overseas and working on housing and related infrastructure issues, I was a bit dismissive about Women's Day. But once you really go to communities where there's still societal norms that, you know, men lead, the patriarchy leads, you start to see how necessary it is to champion women and to break barriers that still need to be broken also in Western countries, like the Netherlands has never had a female prime minister, and I think there are many emerging countries where there's been great leadership by women. But a small anecdote, if I may, one of my first jobs overseas was in India, a project to improve sanitation services in villages. And in one of my few weeks there, I went to do a focus group session with a group of women. And there were these women of various ages, but the majority of the elder women with these glasses. And I started to inquire, I think my internet is giving problems. Are you still hearing me?
Yeah, we're on. You're inquiring about their glasses.
Yeah, and then you know, you read about the statistics, how many people are without toilets, but you don't, when you're studying it, you don't read. You just take that as a fact. These women were adjusting their food and drinking intake to ensure they didn't have toilets, so they had to go to the field. So and because of environmental degradation already then, 20 years ago, there were very few bushes to go and answer the call of nature, as they named it there. So it was for them dangerous to go out at night. So they would manage their food and drink intake to ensure they didn't have to go poo in the fields at night because they would get attacked there. You know, that's the reality. So once you see that local reality, and you start to see that in a lot of countries, you know, I'm lucky. I was able to buy a house on my own as a woman, but in many countries that's not possible. And once you see what systemic barriers are for women to get access to those basic services, then you start fighting hard. And since then, I've been, well, as Fatou already said, you want to commemorate Women's Day not only on this day, March 8th, but on every day.
Yeah, thanks for that, Marie. Absolutely. And I know we reflect on this working in housing every day, but it's really about the building blocks of society that put women in a position to be able to have choice in their lives like we are privileged to have. And one of those building, of course, education, health, but also housing. And I know we've discussed before what it means even to have a front door that can lock, that is secure, and what that does for women in society. So it's especially relevant to us in our work every day. So that brings us to a more general question, getting to know you. And if you can talk about what you like about working in affordable housing and your experiences so far, that would be great. We can keep in the same order if you'd like, Fatou.
Certainly. So I come to housing from a design background. So really looking at architecture and building and how to meet the basic needs. And I remember in architecture school, you always have a housing studio. It's always very in vogue. And it's really issues about domesticity and about homemaking and all these kind of traditional labels about the house, not looking at the house as an economic engine. But actually, if you begin to invest in housing, you can transform your cities. You can be able to empower people to in the production of housing. That can be a major economic driver. And so all those aspects, I mean, that's what I really like about housing. And it's more than just meeting the daily routine needs of the family, but it's also actually, it is a key tool of the economy if done right, and a key tool of urban development also if thought right. And I think also what I just like from being a designer is, you know, you're never going to find any two families that are the same. You're never going to find any two households that are the same. You know, two communities that are the same. And so you always need to have different responses. Housing is going to change by context, and that allows for constant creativity and engagement and an opportunity to listen and exchange that I think other, at least in my opinion, very biased one, of course, but other parts of the design discipline don't have that same give and take and sensitivity that housing does.
No, thanks for that. And Marie?
Yeah, for me, what's great about housing, it's so, and Fatou touched upon that already a little bit, it's so multifaceted, you know, it's not just when you know, children think of a house, think of the stones and think of the house itself, but it's about building communities, and there's so much impact one can create also with that. And it's about the construction side, it's about marketing and client research, it's about financial modeling. So it's very broad and multifaceted. Also, what I think is so important to realize, and especially in emerging countries, is that if you step into the affordable housing sector, especially in those societies right now, there's really transformational change to be achieved if one can get to the phase. And we're right at the verge now because of a lot of interesting developments worldwide, also in terms of finance becoming more accessible and other types of innovations, which we can speak more about later, that where affordable housing at scale, to be honest, hasn't really happened yet in the majority of these societies, but can have such a transformative impact for the future. And so it's very exciting to be involved. Sometimes I don't know whether to be more frustrated or excited because it should have happened so long ago already, but it's very excited to be part of an affordable housing movement right now.
If I can just add one point to that, if you don't mind, it's especially here, you know, I'm living and working on the African continent. The demand is so astronomical, right? So even in Rwanda, where I'm mainly focused right now, the plan is that by 2050, in the next 30 years, you need 5.5 million new housing units. And so that requires an industry to come or several industries to be able to launch into the production of that housing. But it also means, you know, when we're talking about climate change and achieving the targets for 2030, et cetera, housing really could be the tool to rethink the building material industry in terms of its impact on climate. If we make a change with how we think about housing, how we think about producing and delivering housing, we could actually really make a dent in some of these climate targets that we also have. And that those two things parallelly, and if I think women are everywhere in the housing sector, we might not see them, but they are everywhere present, driving. And the fact that they could be championing and leading this effort is for me, I mean, I get up in the morning and I think, how lucky am I to be able to do this kind of work? It's really fascinating to get other women for them to step up and to take the lead. I think is a wonderful opportunity. So sorry, just wanted to add that about our climate goals.
Absolutely. And we've got an international kind of attendee list, but I know a lot of the attendees will be coming from the UK, and they'll probably be surprised to hear about the international affordable housing sector. And, you know, understanding that across the world, everyone's at a different point in their journey in the development, first of all, of formal housing at all. So moving away from a self-build model towards, you know, mortgages and a housing finance system and everything else. And so I wondered if you could talk a little bit about some of the interventions and programs that you've worked on that is all part of moving the sectors that you're working in forward, just to paint that picture about the sector.
Marie, do you want to go ahead?
Atu, you want to? Sure. And either way is fine with me. But I'm keen to. I'm biting my tongue to share what we've done because so much is possible, and I feel the excitement. It's almost like I'm in the room with Fatou, which I hope to be one day, because there's so many opportunities. That's actually why, together with some colleagues, I started Casa Real in Mozambique, one of the poorest countries in Africa, because what you see, what's emerging is that a new paradigm is emerging of social enterprising entering this affordable housing business. The paradigms that have been there till date, either large-led government programs with a lot of subsidy or self-built, just haven't reached to the quantity and quality that's necessary. But what we have built with Casa Real from 2018 onwards is really, first of all, Casa Real showed that with an incremental housing approach, one can make housing. Before we started, actually, as Casa Real, housing from the formal market, so not self-built, but housing developed by developers, cost $50,000, and we showed that not with rocket science but with simple measures, so scaling back the house being offered to the sheer minimum an acceptable house, so a studio with kitchen and bathroom, one could say, but already with a layout that accommodates for the extension of the house, so it's well planned and all infrastructure is there, that there's a huge appetite for it. I mean, research showed that roughly 50 million houses are needed in Africa. I would dare to say it's even much more than that. You know, we're even not, you know, and actual delivery by the developers is, you know, there's only a handful of developers, affordable housing developers, so not for the elite, outside of South Africa that deliver more than a few hundred houses per year. So just look, Cassidy, you mentioned there's probably quite a few people from the UK housing industry present. Just think of the institutions that are delivering houses now in the UK and how much they're delivering, and think of that number, 50 million, and then a few operators active there. And Another small anecdote on confirming the huge potential. When Casa Real started marketing that first incremental housing type, the team wanted to put an advert on local TV, and once it was put together, also with the prices, what was on offer for a $10,000 price, the representative from that TV channel actually came back to our team and said, "Are you sure? Are you sure you can do this? Can you deliver it at that price? Because the demand will be huge." And let me also put a huge challenge, and something that has till date also not been working in Africa, and one needs a more Africanized solution for it, is the end user financing market, which specifically finance, because they earn less, they earn more informal. So I'm very excited about what we've been developing now at Empower, and that is a lease to buy offering at affordable rates, and predictable financing. Current financing of these initiatives is often a stop and go, and there's nothing more killing in creating trust if you have to stop and go every time, and it's killing for businesses also, if that needs to happen all the time. So that lease to buy offering is so crucial to get more low to middle income households on the housing ladder in quality housing and greener housing, and it's a different way at evaluating clients whether they can afford a house, because so many Africans earn informal in parallel to a formal job, but it's very difficult to assess to date whether they are.
Is it on? Am I logged on?
I think we have Sadia joining.
Sounds like it. So lease to buy, they can actually, instead of looking back and having someone have the required paperwork, which is often lacking in Mozambique, and I'm sure it's not that much different in Rwanda or in your region, Fatou. In Mozambique, there's 600 mortgages till date. 600, not 600,000. You know, in a country of 30 million people. With lease to buy, actually, a developer can start renting out the house, and then if a client the client can build their track record of credible payments while they rent. And what we also see is if a household or an individual has a stable basis, they will start earning more, they will start saving more. And actually, it's the female-led households that save the most. So when they've leased a few years and have equity because they've saved, then these are interesting clients for banks. So then also these schemes can get refinanced, capital can be reused. So that, yeah, it's a no-brainer, I would say.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. Absolutely. And like you say, I mean, it's this full range. We refer to it as the kind of market continuum or the ecosystem, but it's everything. It's building the right house for the right price, but then reinventing the wheel really about, you know, what kind of financial products are out there to help people into those homes. Fatou, I'm sure you have things to add while we get Sadia hopefully on the screen.
So sorry, everybody. I don't know if you can hear me, but I really apologize. I feel like I'm in kindergarten trying to struggle through my ABCs just to locate where the camera button is. So sorry, ladies.
That's all right. No, we can hear you. Okay, we can't see you quite yet, but I'm sure we'll get there.
So some of the work that I have had the great privilege, and I really must say it that way, to be able to work on here in Rwanda was specifically looking at this, the delivery of housing, so the supply, and how creating businesses, the problem is always finding finance for affordable housing, but how if you actually start to look all the way to the construction and the building of houses, there's money to build. People, the developers are building, and how if they can use that investment that they're making into construction into make an investment into building materials, and then eventually then make their way into housing. It's another way of distributing the money, which if you say put money in housing, everybody says, no, 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 that population is too risky, I can't do it. But if you build it around another type of investment in terms of the production of housing, that's one way to look at the equation. So that's the type of work I've had the great privilege of doing. And that involved figuring out how to make, with the team, an improved brick and an improved kiln. Sometimes that kiln can be portable and actually go to the site and produce on site. So all of those kinds of technical solutions that actually at the end can give you the product and the technologies that can allow you to build an affordable house. And then all the parameters about how to finance it and things like that. That is step number 2. And so that is my probably third life that I've had here now, is understanding what the supply chain and the value chain of housing looks like, and what are the specific finance interventions along that chain for each one of these different submarkets. So, what the formal developer is doing is totally different, has a different logic to it than what the self-builder. But both of those are legitimate chains. And how do we formalize those chains? How do we make them stronger? Which means that we need to analyze them separately and understand both the construction aspects and the housing, physical housing product, and then also understand the financing of that product and those families. So construction finance as well as end user finance.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of moving pieces, certainly. Sadia, we can hear you. I don't know if you have any additions. We're talking about what we like about working in affordable housing, but also the kinds of interventions and programs that our panelists have been involved in to help promote that, mostly on the African continent in this case, but also worldwide.
Sure, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be on here with amazing ladies, and Cassidy, on and off the last few weeks, we've kept in touch about just affordable housing. I think Nigeria is not different from some of the countries you guys are discussing. I think for us it's probably a matter of scale. So population-wise, you're looking at over 200 million. And then depending on which figure and what source you want to rely on, our deficit is anything from 17 to 25 million. So when I hear to talk about 5 million, I just think that's fantastic. That's actually something that we could probably start.
Oh, hello.
Oh no, everybody.
Can you hear me? You lost me.
We can hear you now. You cut off for a second.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, coupled that with the internet connection as well, and it's good times. No, so I was, just delving into quickly, I think just how significant our housing deficit is, and they've been kind of two-pronged approach in terms of intervention, and it falls into public and private. And public, there are a number of interventions, but somehow I think in terms of whether it's the implementation side of things, the coordination side of things, you just have that disconnect. And I think often because you don't have everybody involved around a table to say what works and what doesn't work, you then have kind of agencies working very much in silos and not talking to each other. So you might have amazing, let's go and build 5,000 units, in X, but then there isn't an access road to get to 5 kilometers of kind of bulky roads where you need to change the suspension every 2 weeks. Then nobody buying, or the catchment area where there are no schools, no shops, so on and so forth. So whereas the private sector is very good at doing that, they're very good at knowing where to build, then private sector doesn't have as much access to options that allows them to kind of really spread out scale for mass projects, mass development in the thousands. And I think another major challenge for Nigeria also is just unlocking the mortgage side of things makes it particularly difficult to scale out affordable homes on a huge spectrum. Now, lastly, I'm not sure what's happening for most other countries, but for Nigeria, everything from oil prices to inflationary pressures to our forex is the significant amounts of the supply chain and the process that goes into producing affordable housing suddenly really become very expensive. So developers like Urban Shelter, where I had, we're really kind of scrambling as to can we still maintain our $10,000 homes, which is our starter home, as it were. So those are the kind of factors that we're facing and interventions. I don't know whether you're able to catch that.
Yeah, a little bit. It is breaking up just slightly, but yeah, I mean, I'm hearing what you're saying about the challenges of a developer that's trying to drive down costs to access the affordable housing market. So a developer like Urban Shelter that has experience in real estate more generally. So like you say, linking into the agencies and government working together with the private sector to make all of that work. But then as something that, we've been talking about now for a little bit, making sure that the finance products are there to support developers. If they don't have an off-taker for their products, they don't have a product. Getting all that to fit together is basically the name of the game of the sector, while keeping costs low.
If I can add to that,
Yeah,
Cassidy,
please.
I'm not sure, sorry, because I had an internet issue. It seems to be the theme, my theme of this session, apart from Women's Day. I'm not sure if Sadia mentioned it, but what so many people don't realize internationally is how atrociously limiting the financial conditions are from local financial sector for affordable housing. I'd like to hear from both Fatou and Sadia. In Mozambique, it's 20+%. The rate for the end user financing. For a developer, it's probably upwards 30% for 6-month financing. No one can do affordable housing under those conditions. So it can mean that, in essence, the projects you're delivering as affordable housing developer, if they were to be for a fair price, like here where I'm currently in the Netherlands, affordable housing institutes, and Fatou Sadia, maybe want to block your ear for a second because it's shocking. They can borrow 30 years financing, a term of 30 years for around 1%, then you can do affordable housing, and then there's additional comfort from government. But something needs to change for those systemic blockages that hold back developers. Casa Real, my company in Mozambique, delivers housing for income levels, families with a family income between $250 to $750, and that's a sustainable business case. But that's only because it doesn't get financed by local financial institutions. That would kill it immediately. So I just wanted to make that point. People think African developers build slow. It's not that, or that Africans low middle incomes don't have enough money to build a bankable business case. That's not holding it back. It's the atrocious financial conditions that hold it back, investment conditions. Anyway, I've finished my speech on this. It's a huge frustration.
Fatou, Sadia, anyone have any thoughts?
Just ditto. the same thing here. It's you're basically you almost have to be informal. There's no way that you can follow the rules of formal and be able to deliver at the price points that are expected. Just too many constraints, and the market, frankly, the banks right now, they're not even interested. And I think it's also, we're always talking about, let's train the communities to build differently. Let's train them how to build building materials. Yes, all that. But let's also talk to the lenders and teach them how to service a different kind of financial product that has a different audience for it. And they have to take some responsibility. Otherwise, we're constantly going to be operating either outside the financial, which is a missed opportunity for the country then at that point. So you're going to be operating outside entirely of the bank framework, or even so far that you're just in the informal sector. So those comments from both women, ladies, are same experience here.
And that is why I'm so excited about the work we're doing with Empower, to really showcase that once affordable housing, which can be transferred in a predictable way to developers on a lease to buy scheme for these low to middle clients that these developers aspire, that Empower partners with, that there is a business to be built. Empower is still quite small in its delivery now, but because it's taking away that biggest bottleneck, it's going to grow quickly, and it has a special focus on women, because women are just a good investment in terms of them being clients of affordable housing. They say, when research shows that women-led households versus male-led households, those women-led households save more for housing.
Thanks for that. Sadia, I don't know if you have any thoughts before we move on. Okay, I can't hear her.
Sorry, I'm
Okay.
beginning to, my network's really fluctuating at the moment, so I'm just catching the last bit.
Yeah,
So,
no problem.
can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Sorry, Cassidy, please go ahead. Yeah, sorry, because my side is fluctuating.
No
Okay.
problem, no problem. Great. Okay. Thanks for that. So I hope that helped some of our audience kind of understand some of the challenges and constraints of the affordable housing sector internationally. So now we're going to talk about some of the like gender related challenges, progress, and lessons that our panelists have experienced. So the question is, what kind of gender specific challenges or stereotypes or barriers have you had to overcome during your career? I don't know if anyone has. Oh, hi, Sadia. Perfect. Yes, so who would like to kick us off on gender-related challenges, barriers?
Tanya, as your newest in view, you want to go ahead? Oh, can't hear.
So you're on mute, Sadia.
Am I back? Gosh, this has been a real adventure. Oh my goodness. Well, you can really tell, obviously, women are very tenacious because, here I am stuck into this 30 minutes later. I mean, where do you begin? Some of us are very obviously, I can't get away from how I look, whether it's lady in hijab, whether it's a lady, whether it's black. And of course, some of you may or may not have emails from a Nigerian prince. I am Nigerian. So you're kind of contending, I think, with all of that. And I think there's also the angle, not just gender-based, but the whole fact that there's a professional kind of, I think, snobbery as well when it comes to housing sometimes. If you go through someone's name and there isn't engineering, architecture, QS, or any one of those disciplines, I think that also comes to play. But for me, you get underestimated. I actually don't mind that because you won't see me coming, as it were. So it's something I actually play to. I look forward to that opportunity. Kind of, it's your loss, unfortunately, especially across a negotiating table, for you to have made that assumption that I am anything less than what I say I'm going to be. But I think also it's experience. I think it's that tenacity, it's that determination. I think women, there's an excellence that come to us. They know that we have to do the work, I think, twice as much. That's fine. I think a gender question might come in on that first 5 minutes, but pretty quickly it gets dispelled. We're also people that feel that we need to our actions are kind of speaking louder than words. So there's a level of delivery that when we do, you find, no offense to the men kind of in the room, but when you begin to compare it, I think it's really actually becomes very clear. So in terms of quality, we had our first female project manager about 7 years ago. She delivered an outstanding project, which at the time we just thought wasn't achievable. It turns out that women are just better at attention to detail. Women are better at things like multitasking and multi-management, and even money management to a certain extent when it comes to budgeting. So things that may not seem huge, actually cumulatively, then really becomes a plus for women, despite the fact that there is a gender bias when it comes to this industry. And I don't know, I'm so sorry actually that the other ladies have experienced that.
Anyone want to jump in?
I mean, I'll say from a technician point of view. So a lot of times either I'll find, especially in the field, that people just won't talk to me. I may say the question, I may be the boss, but they're going to respond to my colleague that's sitting next to me. And I think that's very common. But the other thing is I do agree that a lot of times, especially when I work for the government, a few times it was, oh, that little girl in the corner, we're not really worried about her. So I got to see and hear things that I probably wouldn't have otherwise if I had been viewed as more of a threat. And that allowed me, of course, then to make, to have a wider picture, to be able to propose strategies and be a little bit 2 steps ahead if I hadn't had that soundbite that I probably shouldn't have been privy to. But the ignoring my presence, and that is very, very common. And then as you see, and especially because I did a lot of work with the actual, like I said, the industry that's making housing, to see that if you want to change the status of women, you actually have to rethink the production process in a way that it cannot put women at the bottom, can offer opportunities and new skills that women are actually better at within the same, for us, it was within making a brick. If you change brick making and add in different protocols and build into those new protocols places where women can excel, you can't force them out of the way in the same way. And that for me was the kind of blew my mind, and was another way to be strategic without necessarily being forceful. We were just all targeting a better project and a better product and a better bottom line. And in that, the role of the women couldn't be wiped away because it was part of making more money at the end, which made business owners made their ears perk up.
Absolutely. And I mean, we keep coming back to this kind of fact that we're thinking about the wider world and the Western world that we participate in the developing world. But women represent over half of the economy, and for many places have not fully realized that resource, actually. So there is a financial economic argument for empowering women, getting them into the right jobs, getting them into the right levels of power, that you know is inarguable. Marie, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I think we have to also, I mean, for me, it was, but let me get to that later. I first of all want to also confirm to what Sadia was saying, that women have many skills that make them exceptionally equipped for a lot of jobs they're not automatically to be seen as good in. One thing I've had to learn, and that's also the way we're being raised as women, you know, to be sweet, to be kind, to be patient. And I've had to, well, as a originally Dutch culture educated person, it was maybe slightly less difficult for me because the Dutch are quite to the point and sometimes not very polite. But you have to learn to take your position and not step back and let sometimes you have to let the other person go first, but you have to claim your position as a woman. And they may call you loud, they may call you annoying, they may, you know what, you probably all know these researches where certain qualities of a person, if you put them to a man, he's seen as ambitious and as etc. And those same attributes with women are then the conclusion is that those are all negative attributes, the loud, obnoxious, whatever. But you have to take, although I was raised by my parents with the best intentions, and for as far as I think they were aware of gender neutral, women are raised in a way to be sweet and calm and different than boys. And we need to develop ourselves to take off that load and take our place. And for that, role models are also so important, and that's why I'm so happy to be participating in this session with such fabulous colleagues in the sector. And I think we need to get out there more, even to show that you know, women can lead, women can deliver. They are doing it.
And on that, does anyone have any other kind of lessons and realizations that they've come across in their careers, or progress that you've seen that you want to add?
Sorry, go ahead.
I think perhaps well, going on from what Marie says, you know, and it's really up the kind of the theme for this year, 2022, is to break that bias. And I think each of us also, you know, as individuals, collectively, society as well, have those biases. And this can start, I think, very early. So when you're talking about kind of upbringing, I think it's very important how we treat for those that have children or those that do mentoring, how we treat the men and the women, how we treat the boys and the girls. I was trying to buy my niece a suit, for instance, because she wanted to, it's a career day, and she wanted to be anti-Sadia, that's me. So she was looking for a suit, and I said, well, you know, why don't I buy it for you? And I checked shop after shop after shop. There are no suits, girls. I went to the boys section to buy her a suit. The t-shirts for the girls that say, I'm a star, dream big. For the boys, it says, the boss, or it says, astronaut, or future scientist. Now, it might not seem like a huge deal, and I'm not trying to start any kind of movement other than the one I'm on now, which is equality, or at least a move towards equality. Kind of not structuring them immediately into this pigeonhole really early on. The very basics, I think, should be there in terms of options. And I think that has to be provided. Otherwise, you know, it's a really difficult conversation to have. So I think also individually what we're doing to break biases, how we're progressing, making sure we're inviting more women to the table. If you're going for a meeting, take an extra lady there. And when you get to a meeting, it's all men. Even if it's just a joke, make that joke to say, where are the women in your offices? I do that all the time when I go for a meeting in finance. For instance, we're looking for money, and I see the senior management team are all men, and I actually make a point to say, do you not have a lady on your team? Would you like me to lend you one as well? And there's an uncomfortable laugh, but I suddenly hope that after that meeting, that they go start thinking, gosh, oh, that was a bit uncomfortable. Maybe we should start actively doing. When, you know, interviews are coming up, for the love of God, send more women in. You know, women, when they see an advert for a job, even if they meet it 100%, they're like, oh, I don't know, oh, can I, should I, maybe. A guy will have a BSc, you know, he'll have a GSc in biology. The job is for a surgeon. He'll say, I can do it, I'm going to go for it. So I think that level of courage, we need to have more of a sisterhood to push ourselves into that. And I think we can all identify a few women, another sister, another colleague lady, 3, 4, 5, make sure interviews comes before their CV. If there are meetings happening, make sure there are a few women on the table. And then the last thing, but hopefully, I think it's important to have these conversations with men as well. I love these platforms with women. It provides a safe space for us to be vulnerable, to be honest, to share experience. I think we need to involve men, because how many of you golf? I don't know how to golf. I don't like working in the heat. Do you golf? Cassidy, Marie, do you go golfing?
Sorry, I didn't get that question.
Nobody golfs? So many of you go golfing, play golf?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, golf.
Nobody plays golf?
Yeah.
Good. Cassidy, have you noticed the amount of business opportunities and deals that are discussed at golf?
Why I
don't
play
go golfing.
golf.
So Cassidy, I expect you to give me a call after to say there's a business deal going down. Well, anyway, what I'm trying to say is 99% of men, whenever you go for a golfing tournament or anything, it is heavily gender skewed to men. So while we need some of these men is they will know about the top jobs coming. They will know about the big transactions coming. They will know about financial flows coming before a lot of us women know. So we need the men as well to be real advocates, to be really intentional about saying, you may not have heard of this simply because I was in an environmental or boys club. I was in a men's only gentleman's club, and therefore I'm privy to this information. So I'm going to try, bring Marie in. So I think also we need men to be advocates of this. I think that's something we don't push enough about when it comes to International Women's Day. We're celebrating ourselves, absolutely. We're advocating for breaking that bias, but men need to be part of that. Definitely, they have to be a driving force as well.
100%, Sadia.
No, thanks for that. You're absolutely right, and it is a conversation with all, and it brings us really well onto our kind of wrap-up question, which is twofold. So it's, what advice would you give to women who are building their careers in housing? But also, what advice would you give to the other viewers who might not be women, might be in positions of power, for them to break the bias, to leave that room for women?
I think everything was almost already covered by Sadia, but one of I'll mention two specific things I've learned myself in my career, and which are so important. Whether you're a man or a woman, make a conscious effort to diversify your teams or your efforts or whatever your sphere of influence is. very interesting. I read a research the other day, and it's actually, research shows that men, after they became a father of a daughter, start being more impactful themselves on improving, you know, like in big companies, when the CEO became a father of a daughter, they start developing better childcare policies in the company. But we can't wait till every CEO, male CEO, has had a daughter. Maybe they will never reach that stage, or a grandchild. So be very conscious of diversity, because if you diverse your teams, or whatever teams you have influence on, culturally, but also balance at a minimum, bring in a minimum number of enough female, because, you know, at our level, it's usually minority men. You will get the voices that push you to start making better environments for all, which at the end, let me stress that also, usually all these researchers show that those policies and actions ultimately mean better businesses, better results, better achievements for be it public or private sector. So that is one. So be conscious of diversity, and that it takes an effort. And therefore, maybe temporarily you have to put an extra focus on a certain group. That's okay. Otherwise, you won't get there. Two is, and that's also been mentioned already by Sandhya, but I had to realize that myself also. Sometimes you're so proud and glad to reach the position, you try to adapt. So you have to prevent yourself to reinforcing also the status quo there. Women have to stand up for other women. I'm tapping on my table. That's the noise you hear in the background, because that is so important. I mean, that's another research I only came across a few years ago. I think it was in Obama's cabinet, where the women in leadership consciously made an effort to repeat and amplify and strengthen what other women were saying, because the way society functions now, that unconsciously we're reinforcing the men. So they made a specific effort as a rule to do that. So that needs to, you know, women standing up for women, unless they do something very bad, but where you can and where you think it's good, do that. Don't feel strange about it.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. Becoming advocates for each other, but also to say men can be advocates too. And it's mentorship, you know, not just mentoring with women, but mentoring with men and reverse mentoring. There's all these things to do, but you're absolutely right. And those are some really good tips. Anyone else have some thoughts on how to break the bias and any advice for career builders?
I definitely, in my experience, and I realized from the way I grew up, it was always about, I was either the only Black person, or the only woman, or the only Black woman in the room. And so I learned to make myself kind of neutral, right? And I realized that wasn't thinking long term about, and I wasn't doing any favor to my sisters as other women. And I need to show up with all the things that make me a woman, whether it be that I want to be maternal about the way I think about certain things, or the way I want to be empathic, or the way that I express myself, or think about a problem. I can't minimize and make those things small. I have to come and be unapologetic about those things, and that this is what a woman is and what she brings to the table, so that they get used to it. They have to get used to it. And that so other women can then come and be their full selves. And that by minimizing, I was only helping myself survive and not really making sure that we could show up in all of our fullness. At the same time, though, I think, especially since I tend to country hop a little bit in where I'm working, being culturally sensitive and respectful for me is critical, which means that I think it's very important, whether you're a man or a woman, to learn how to work in teams and diverse teams. And I know that there are certain messages that shouldn't come from me, just from a cultural perspective, just from how to position yourself. And if you work well with a team, certain messages to be sensitive to your context, even if you don't necessarily agree with their principles, I think it's really important. And if nothing else, they can respect you and admire you for that, even if your gender for them is still an issue, but that you're able to learn how to communicate and know what needs to come from you, what needs to come from your colleague, and how you can build an exchange together, not just as one person. And that really, I think, for me has made a difference in how I'm able to work here.
Thank you. Any other final thoughts, more panelists? I think that's been, please do jump in. I think that's been really helpful. It's really good to reflect. You know, it's something that in a world where we're trying to move forward in a lot of different ways, you know, it kind of comes back to my introduction. You know, this game isn't over, right? So I was reading about International Women's Day, and a lot of some of the commentary was, why are we even celebrating that? Didn't we get equality in the 70s? You know, this is over. And I think, that's a very specific view to a specific woman, but also it is these softer things. You know, I'm able to go to work just as my male counterparts. That is a huge progression, and yes, that is something that I'm thankful for. But it is all of these softer bits about influence, and why is it that in female heads of state are nowhere near the representation of men? And it's all of those nuances and things that, you know, are fitting together that contribute to that larger whole. But we still have work to do. I think taking away that we are advocates for each other and that men can be advocates too. I think from this networking, you know, talking to each other about our experiences, as Sadia says, being vulnerable and raw and sharing stories. I know from this series, I was very selfish, and then I got to have one-on-one conversations with all of you and learn from your experiences. And you taught me so much about, you know, how it is to lead as a woman and how I should prepare myself, but lessons as well to bring to my work. So thank you very much. I think we're out of time, but thanks for your time. Thank you for the attendees who did join to celebrate and reflect on International Women's Day. But hope to see you all soon. If you guys drop us, please do interact. This is a live series. We'll be adding to it, hopefully have future events in the future. So if you have any, you know, individuals that you feel are particularly inspiring in the housing sector, do drop us a LinkedIn message, tweet us, follow our website, and please do remain part of the conversation with us. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Happy International Women's Day, everybody. Great to meet you all. Hopefully be in touch. Thank you.
Ciao. Bye-bye.
Bye.